I've got two up here. I would say don't try to follow along, really. Maybe listen to the slides, or listen to me talk about what's on the slide, because I'm also going to intersperse with some of my personal experience, just with gardening. I've been gardening pretty much my whole life. So Matt is still working on
Yep, we almost got it.
I guess they're connecting to YouTube, so
I just hit the wrong button there, so bear with me.
Okay.
So
Here's
while
my
they're doing
remote.
that, if you guys have the agenda, anybody who does not have the agenda,
I have it here. It's over there.
thank you. I'm going to give this, I have my last copy.
Oh, thank you very much.
Alright, so one of the first things is the next meeting is on February 6th, 2023. It's a Monday night at 7 p.m. Of course, we offer community service hours if you would like to come. And basically, the speaker is going to be Culture Council of Palm Beach. And she's going to talk about what they do. They have an office here on Lake Avenue. They have free events. If you like art, this is a really good.
There it is.
Or anything about culture, she does a lot of art. And it's really amazing the things that they do. March 6th,
Okay.
we're going to.
So there's
the
this
speaker
presentation
from
here. You're
Johnny
going to do the little
Production
one first?
So
No.
they're
Okay,
offering
so
free
then
swimming lesson
it's
vouchers,
MGV.
and she's going to
this
tell
one?
you how to get
Okay.
free swimming lessons.
So I'm going
if
to
you
open that
have
up.
Any brothers or sisters,
And
or anybody in your
then,
family that doesn't know how to swim,
let's see,
Johnny
we're
Production
going to
Coalition
hit
is going to tell you how to get those free swimming lessons, and it's free during the
and
summer.
it should pop up there.
So if you're interested, you can also get
The only
service
thing
hours
is
for
I
that
need
as
to make
well.
sure that YouTube is capturing
So
it,
we
so
have
give me
a
1 second.
exercise park here. It's called the Tropical Ridge Exercise Park, and on February 11th and the 25th, from 10 a.m. to 12, we need volunteers. Basically, we have garden raised beds. So in this presentation, you're gonna get some exposure to information with gardening. So we hope that some of this information, background information, will help you understand gardening better, and maybe when you go home, you can help your parents or your families with gardening. But this at Tropical Ridge Exercise Park is from 10 a.m. to 12.
Where is your best? What I was going to say.
If you guys know where the Compass building is,
Oh, behind it.
behind it.
Half a block up from the police station.
Yeah, it's on North H Street. So it's on February 11th and 25th. I will send more information to Lakewood High School regarding. I'll make flyers for that, so you guys will get more specific information when we meet and everything. But you guys have the heads up, so let your friends know if they need community service hours. Invite them.
There it is, window capture.
And all the garden tools will be provided, seeds. All you gotta do is just dress up as like if you're gonna be working in dirt. So don't wear your nicest clothes or anything. January 19th. Do you guys know about the Gulfstream Hotel? Okay, well there's this really old hotel near Bryant Park. Some say it's haunted, but it's been it's basically not been used for over 20 years.
Beautiful.
So they have a presentation of the history of Gulfstream Hotel. So if you like history and you want to know about the history of Lake Worth and get to know, it's not just about the hotel, but there's also anything surrounding the hotel and the history of Lake Worth. It'll be free on January 19th, and it's at the Lake Worth Library at 6:30 p.m. So if you're interested in that, we will have elections coming up soon. So if you're interested in any of these positions, we will have a vote. So these are the positions available: President, Vice President, Treasurer, Secretary, Social Events Director, Communications Director, Community Outreach Director. So if you're interested in these positions, come talk to us.
Okay.
NAPC news. So NAPC stands for Neighborhood Association President's Council. This is where all the presidents of all the neighborhood associations come together, and they come.
So
once
there's
a
your
month,
presentation.
and they talk about
It's live.
the important events, things that affect the city of Lake Worth.
Which advances?
So
It
some
should
of these
be.
dates that you guys see,
what we have to do,
the
we have to
Great
go
Taste Festival. Great
here.
Taste Festival is where you go to different
Now
Lake
should
Worth
work.
restaurants and you sample their food.
Yep.
You do have to buy tickets.
And then what you wanted
The
to see
Street Taste
here,
Festival,
I
you guys
think,
know about
was.
Street Taste Festival, right? It's on February 25th.
Oh, yeah.
You wanted to see this, right?
You know,
Or when
you
not
when you were a
quite
kid,
this
you
view,
took
you wanted
chalk
to
and
see.
write and draw on the sidewalk and
You
things
had
like that.
notes somewhere you wanted to see.
I don't
So,
need to see the
think they
notes,
need
but I mean, I can look up here to see
yeah,
the
and then you
slides.
and then
It's
you can
just
get
a
community
little
service
more
hours.
awkward.
You want to see this bigger like that?
So
Yes,
I will send
in front
more
of me if
information
I
on that
can.
in your
Okay.
book regarding
Let's see. Maybe I can just move something down.
March 3rd through the 5th, they have the Midnight Sun Festival. So back a long time ago, they used to have a large community of people from Finland. So this is a Finland.
Is that better?
This
Now
one,
March
you
12th,
can't
the
advance the
Grove
slides
Tour.
with this.
Hmm?
March
You can't
12th is
advance the
State
slides
Path
with
Parade.
this.
Oh, yeah, you can
March
look at that too.
13th
I wasn't
is the
planning on you being right in
Golf
front of the
Garden
computer.
Tour. So if you like
Okay.
golfing, this is a good event to do. They also need
All right.
volunteers. So it's
I
hosted by
made the
Downtown
table a
Jewel.
little longer. So
Oh,
March
okay,
25th
great.
is the Pride Festival.
no,
And March
more.
26th is the Pride Parade.
No.
They are looking for raft race. Have you guys ever?
Pollinators. If it has a flower, something's going to that flower. It could be a bee, a wasp, a butterfly, a moth, hummingbirds. So generally, weeds aren't necessarily bad. It's up to your tolerance, really. A lot of the yards here in Lake Worth are, predominantly mixed, weeds. Some native weeds, some non-native weeds. But there are benefits to those weeds. So yeah. So going back, because you asked about that with weed and feed, on fertilizers and pesticides, the label is the law. So what the label says, the application rates, how you do all that, that's actually federal law that dictates what it is. So be really careful. Over fertilizing is one of the, it's actually could be bad. Palms don't like high nitrogen fertilizers, so try and avoid doing turf fertilizers close to palms. It actually prevents them from taking up the micronutrients that they need, much more than trees, boron, manganese, magnesium, and many others. Touching on planting depth, number one killer of trees, planting too deep. So as Jenny said, a lot of times you have to, when you get a tree from a nursery, take your fingers or garden cloth and rake that soil back, and you'll see sometimes, an inch or two, sometimes 2 to 3 inches of soil on top of the root flare. So the root flare is where the trunk comes out, and the first root, they call that the first order root. So where it comes out there, you want to be able to see that before you plant it. So higher is always better, not too high. You want the whole root ball to be in the ground, and that's why you scrape the dirt off of it. The reason the dirt gets on top of it is over time, the tree uses the soil, and soil is an organic product that deteriorates, so it kind of sinks down, and so they add more soil on the top. And so you have to, scrape that off, find those roots. A little more complicated, you have to look for circling, girdling roots. So, the number one thing with buying plants, quality, buy something good to start with, so you're not chasing after it with pruning and fertilizing and having a lot of problems. Volcano mulch, in addition to causing rot, will also, same thing, it reduces the oxygen to the trees, to the roots. The roots actually do need oxygen. Most of the roots are in the top 2 feet of soil, and roots go, typically, it used to be thought that they only go to the drip edge, like the edge of the canopy. They go 3 to 4 times even more. But the thing of it is that they have a very fast progressive taper. So your root at the base of the tree could be 6 inches in diameter. You get 20 feet away, it's the size of your pinky. So that root, and that's the other important thing about right tree, right place. You get sidewalk uplifting. Whenever I tell people about planting trees, I always recommend 8 to 10 feet away from any hard surface. And I always tell people, put it more towards the street. We want walkable neighborhoods, so we want shade over the streets and sidewalks. I get people all the time, I need to trim my tree, it's over the street. And I'm like, no, you don't. Your tree doesn't need to be trimmed. So going into trimming, one of the biggest things is over pruning. People over prune. Trees don't need to be trimmed every year. If you start out with a high quality tree, it has a good branch structure, a clear single trunk, good scaffold branches, even canopy. there's very little you have to do in the beginning, and you really only want to trim for defects. So right tree, right place. So you get the tree that, Jenny showed the slide about the power line where they cut it in a V. So we also reference in our code FPL's program called Right Tree, Right Place, and it's mainly for power lines. One of the biggest power outages in storms is caused by vegetation. So you want to plant trees, under a power line, the maximum height is 15 feet. Almost no trees grow that height. So you have to plant trees farther away from the power lines. It's a really big issue in Lake Worth. Usually they're right along the property line, in the alley, behind, and people don't realize that their trees are in the close to the power lines. The utility, the standard is to have a 10-foot clearance from the power line to the tree. So they're able to come and cut your tree basically flat, on the back side. A lot of people get upset with that, and it just wasn't planted in the right place at the right time. Pruning, like I said, less is more. Palms, the guidance now is not to trim anything. You don't trim any green leaves if you can, only if, it's too close and it's hitting your house, walking clearance, something like that. But generally the guidance is at 3 and 9. So you think of hands on a clock, so horizontal. So you shouldn't remove any palm branches above the horizontal. Sometimes it happens for maintenance intervals. Pruning, it's best to hire a certified arborist, minimum an experienced tree company. If someone comes around and offers to trim your trees and they have a pickup truck and a chainsaw, they're not going to do a good job. If you're trimming your trees every year, you're probably doing it wrong. 3 to 5 years, sometimes hardly ever. Let's see.
You have just a few slides here.
Yeah.
He got it up finally. So I don't know, but there's one. Just use this button to.
Okay.
2 more slides. I think.
Okay. Runoff. Right.
But I think you talk
Okay.
about there's something about trees in there.
Yeah.
Proper pruning.
So the city does have a landscape ordinance, and it's in that code that for single-family homes, it's in 23.6-1C. And like Ginny said, we reference the Florida-friendly landscape in our code and promote that. Proper tree pruning is a responsibility of the property owner. So you hire somebody off the street, the guy with a chainsaw and a pickup truck, and he trimmed your tree wrong, you're the one that's going to get a possible code violation. You're going to be the one that has to fix it. So that's why you should hire a reputable company. If your tree's a large tree and you're concerned about it, like I said, I can come out. A lot of times I tell people very little pruning. I have a green laser that you can see really well, and I'll say cut that branch and cut that branch. And they're like, that's it? I'm like, that's it. It's not like, pruning is like a good haircut. You can tell something is different. You can't put your finger on it. You can tell that it's changed. But so if you can really tell something was pruned, most likely it was pruned improperly. And non-compliance can be costly. Sometimes there's fines, there's replacement. So it's always recommended to hire a professional. You can look up a certified arborist by going to ISA, and they have an arborist finder. You can put in by name or by state or by zip code, and you can find a certified arborist. You're going to pay a little bit more, but you're doing it less, so you're not paying more in the end. So say you pay a certified arborist $1,000 every 5 years, and you pay the guy in the truck $500 every year, you're spending a lot more money. So going back on pruning, topping, also known as hat racking, is not permitted. This is a gumbo limbo tree. You can see all of the foliage was taken off the tree. The tree will generally grow back, but the problem with that is that it grows back very dense. Multiple shoots will come out of each one of those. And by multiple, I mean 10 to 20 or more. And they come off and they have a weak branch attachment. So they're more prone to fail. They really should be thinned out, and you try and select the one. Some trees can be restored, but it takes, a period of years. So less is more. Structural pruning, like I said, but if you start out with a good quality tree, the less likelihood that you're going to need to trim And the other thing too is if you can't get it from standing on the ground, I recommend you hire a professional. It's very unsafe to do chainsaw work above your head or any, trimming or anything. Those branches, can catch on the, you won't anticipate it, but it can catch on a branch and slide your way and not realize that you're in danger. And that's my contact information. I can answer any questions on landscape. Like I said, feel free to contact me if you'd like me to come out to your yard and take a look. Yes?
A few years back, the city gave out rain barrels to residents. Any thought of bringing that program back?
I haven't heard anything. That was a program, I believe, done with the water department and maybe the stormwater department. I'm not sure. I can ask about it, but I don't know. Yeah. You got to be careful with the rain barrels. The barrels that you get. You make sure that it didn't have a petroleum product, that it was not used for pesticides, stuff like that. So get it from a reputable source. Smell it. If it smells like petroleum, smells like a pesticide, doesn't smell, because a lot of chemicals come in those barrels. So you want a clean barrel. If you can get a brand new barrel, that's never had anything in it, that's ideal. But they're more expensive. So you can get recycled barrels. And the thing about the rain barrels is they only hold about 50 gallons, but you can link multiple rain barrels together, and the water will flow. You flow into one, and it'll fill up all 4 or 5. And then, the same thing. You only have one spigot. You can use the whole thing.
We done with this?
Yes. So, like I said, feel free to call me, email me. I'm available to come out and look at your yard and offer you suggestions. Any other questions? Yes.
So there was when I watched the last city commission meeting, a lot of residents got astroturf.
There is.
What are a lot of them asked code compliance, what's wrong with it? So I just wanted to know,
So
what are the pros and cons?
I'm not going to go into the pros and cons. That's something the commission is most likely going to discuss soon. They're aware of that. There's a lot of interest in it and a lot of disinterest. It's probably about 50-50. It has its benefits and it has its detriments. Our landscape code requires that any area not covered by structures or driveways have living ground cover. So that's the part of the ordinance that disallows artificial turf. We don't require grass. We don't require sod. I generally recommend against it. Like Ginny had said, the native ground covers like her yard is, that's ideal. You want to have, attractive wildlife. We're in a, semi-urban area, and, it's nice to see wildlife. My neighbor gave me a bird bath, and I put it in my yard. 2 days later, I had birds in it. I had bird doves. I had a little finch or a viero or something in it yesterday. I have a hawk that's in my neighborhood. I have birds all over the place. So there's a lot. And I don't live in Lake Worth, but I live in between Dixie and Federal on West Palm Beach, 3 streets in from Lake Worth. So I'm very close. My yard is very similar. I have a large oak tree in the front. I have some grassy weeds in the front yard that my lawnmower broke, and I pay someone $60 a month to do it. But eventually, I'm going to plant that in all native, pollinator, natural, attractors. I have a possum that walks through my yard. Possums, people think of these animals as a pest. They actually are very beneficial. Possums eat ticks. One of their favorite things to eat is ticks. So, attracting the wildlife is beneficial. The pollinators. If we didn't have bees, we wouldn't have almost any of the fruit we have. There would be 0 almonds. There's a huge market of people with bees, apiaries, and take the hives all throughout the country through different growing seasons, and put the bees out there for a couple months when the plants are flowering. Some plants flower or cross-pollinate through the wind, but a lot of plants require a pollinator, someone to do the work. And like I said, it's bees, even moths, bats at times, hummingbirds. really any insect that's going to go in that flower and get pollen for any reason is a pollinator. So don't think of just bees and butterflies as pollinators. You know, there's much more pollinators.
I can speak a little bit to the first thing, just about 25 words or less. Oh, by the way, my life is hell right now. I'm sorry. Oh yeah. Oh my God. My phone, my emails are burning. It's admittedly the ordinance about it is not clear. It doesn't say you can't. And if it says that it can, well, that's so apparently someone has just got cited for it somehow, and now they are going across the city citing, just turning in everybody to see that. So it is forbidden at this point. But I am going to suggest we have a pre-family meeting on Wednesday morning, and that's we do that twice a month, just talk about things. And I'm going to bring up the idea that so many people are upset about this, and there does seem to be some. I would like to look at some limited use of that around a pool in the backyard. Be a place for your kids to play. One of the cons, and I won't ask Dave because he's not going to talk about it, has been well. Number one, I would never suggest that we should have plastic lawns in front of our houses. And a couple of people have been very upset when they have to take them back. But some kind of limited use. And I'm also going to ask, because it is so controversial, maybe it's really well, I don't know about the other commissioners, well, I don't want to talk about it. I have a pool to worry about.
At least you don't have a hotel.
Not yet. That's another story. So I'm going to ask the commission for consensus to hold off with code violations at this point until we can have time to have a workshop. Our city attorney says that our city has the most meetings of any city he deals with, and he represents like a lot of College County. So, but I think it's from what I'm hearing from people, it seems like it warrants a conversation. So if the commission will go along with me on Wednesday morning, I'm going to ask, because people have decided, and it's if somebody's going to there's one, we've never really enforced it, so let's try to take a deep breath and see how we can come to some sort of fair resolution about this. And I would propose some sort of limited use.
I was curious because it came up.
It sure did. It hasn't stopped.
I'm like,
It has not stopped.
oh my God.
We read
people are really upset.
Oh yeah, well yeah, sure.
My neighbor has it, and I'm like,
Also, the stone ground cover. People
oh
that.
yeah, the rocks.
Yeah, I have a few of those are tagging onto the artificial turf. Those are really. It's been fun. Here you go.
Anybody else want to go?
I'm just gonna say a question, I don't know the microphone, I'm pretty loud.
Okay.
Actually, you take,
But it's
okay. In taking walks along the beach, I notice in the dune line, there are some Brazilian peppers. Is that something that the city knows about, or we as residents should let the city know about?
I like that. Oh, yeah. That is a very timely question. Ginny and I just met today with the grounds maintenance staff, public services. Two of our biggest ones are the Sandivaria, snake plant of the mother-in-law's tongue, very invasive. And then there's another one called scavola or inkberry. There's a native scavola, and then the non-native scavola is very invasive. So we're developing a plan where we're going to go in very strategically, trim the trees, cut them low to the ground, and do what's called a basal bark treatment or cut stump treatment, where you very precise application of herbicide to kill the plants. Because we don't want to dig up the dune, because that's going to disturb the dune. So we have to time it, it's a timing issue, and we talked about it. There's no great time to do it. We're up against hurricane season and sea turtle season and, all that. So, and it's hot on the beach, even though, it's breezy. So we're trying to do it in the fall, this spring. So Ginny and I are going to map out some places, and we are having that conversation actively. So yes, there is a plan. We're hoping to start it, early March. And it's not going to be done all in one day. Probably over a period of a month or so. You go in there with a crew, a few people, and just be very careful. The dune is protected. by state law. The sea oats are protected by state law, so we have to be very careful and not trample the desirable plants to remove the invasive plants. We don't want to do more harm than what we're trying to do good. So you can do, harm by trying to do good. So we just have to be careful, and have to tiptoe through the sea oats and just be careful about it. So there is a plan.
All those plants were a community project in the 90s. Up until then, there was nothing. It was just sand until the concrete wall. And the city put out the message. It was fun. There were like 100 people, and we all planted. And there were refreshments and stuff. We all had a little fancy plant. And to see it, we were in 25 something.
Yeah.
To see how it's really done what we hope it to do, it's really good to see.
Yeah, I'm a lifelong Palm Beach County resident. I've lived in central Palm Beach County my entire life. Haven't lived west of Haverhill, north of 10th Avenue, south of 10th Avenue, or north of Southern Boulevard. So really right in this general area. Almost drowned at the beach one time, right by the pier. So that's a little tidbit.
Well, we're glad you did.
Yeah. So I remember growing up that when you got to the wall, you had a low barrier wall. It was 2 to 3 feet at least before you hit the ground. And so the problem with that, and the problem with seawalls, and they have it, they're kind of off topic, but the problem with seawalls, especially Palm Beach and like Lantana, they'll lose their whole beach because what happens is they don't have the dune to protect it, and so the waves hit the wall, and water comes back this way, and it pulls all the sand out with it. So that's the biggest. Seawalls are really, really bad for the environment, and that's why they're trying to do more living shorelines and natural dunes like that. So we're lucky to be able to have that. And you can tell if you go after a storm, a big hurricane, or one of our big nor'easters, and you walk along the beach, you can see where the water, got up to the edge of the dune, but didn't breach the dune, and you can actually see the roots of the plants holding the soil in. So that's the important thing. Like I said, when we go in there, we're going to do it strategically. We're not going to, dig up the dune. We're going to, very carefully apply, a pesticide that's allowed to be used. Like I said, very strategically, and work on that. So it is in the plan.
Yeah, I compliment the city. It's beautiful. The other plants behind the dune line, you did a great job planting.
It was a very well land. It's 99% native up there, except for the invasives on the beach. The only non-native stuff that I think was planted when they redid the beach was some oleander to add some color. And they didn't do very well, and they're struggling, and they'll probably be removed. So all the trees and all the shrubs except the oleander, as far as I know, are all native. So while we're talking about that real quick, always try and plant natives. Jenny talked about native ground covers. The big thing about natives, and especially trees, they're adapted to our area. They have adapted to, the winds and the salt and our sandy soils. Like Jenny said, we don't really have soil. We have sand with a very, very thin layer of, topsoil. I used to work in the cemetery when I first started with the city. And so we would dig holes, all the time, 6 feet deep. And just sand, gray sand turns into white sand, just that super fine powdery stuff. So generally our drainage is pretty good. You don't see a lot of yards flooding. You see some street flooding, and that's really just because of the storm drains and how the drain systems are. So, but always try and plant natives if you can. They're going to attract our native wildlife. It's just drought tolerant, low pest, stuff like that. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting us.
I was gonna ask Mayor Benedict if you could talk about I don't know if you wanted to talk about this,
I don't know.
the redistricting.
If you bring me the microphone, I'm so lazy to get up.
Oh, no problem, I'll bring it to you. So does everyone have this, the redistricting maps?
Hi,
I'll pass it out.
at the last vote, there was a referendum to have now single voting districts, which means for the whole history up until now, if you vote for a commissioner, whatever, you vote for the commissioners in all 4 districts. Now it's gonna be, it was a charter amendment, passed by a slim margin, and now if you live in District 2, you vote for District 2 commissioner. What we did not know, what Lake Worth has never done, is apparently every 10 years when they have a census, you're supposed to take a look at your distribution of population and amend your boundaries, and we never ever did that.
I think it's 100 years, right?
It's 100 years, yeah. It's 100 years.
Give or take.
Hey, listen, we're slow on the uptake. So FAU, we hired FAU, which has a group that does this. They're academics and they have no political whatever. And they did it really, they counted a lot of people. So what they found was districts 1 and districts 2 were hugely overpopulated, except for 3 and 4. 3 and 4 were way underpopulated. So we gave them direction to try to stay as much into the quadrants as possible when redistributing the population. It's not going to be perfect, and we're always being, people don't like change. So at the last commission meeting, option number 5 is the one which. Dave, thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do. I appreciate it. Option 5, which is part of your thing. One of the things what happened was when they came with the first maps, the Osborne community, which is a historically identified community. I mean, if you all know the history, it was the Osborne Colored Edition, and you couldn't live there. I mean, that's the only place you could live if you were black. Lake Worth was known as the all-white city. So they added that area. So it's a very historical. I mean, people live there, their grandparents live there, and it's quite a community. So a couple of the suggestions, in fact, cut that community in half, or almost in half. It split it up, which would dilute the vote. So, number 5. So there was a option number 5, the residents came up with an option that we all pretty much, it was an interesting idea, but we sort of rejected it. It took District 2 and made it all down the whole west side of the Osborne district. It was very, very different. So I was ready to vote for option 5 the other day because it makes sense, the numbers are good, keeps the Osborne community, it's the best they can do. But I don't know why, and of course we have the sunshine law, so we don't know ahead of time. We decided to have another workshop and pick 2 and have people give us feedback on those 2. Well, I still do not understand it because option number 5 makes the most sense. Option number 3 does 2 things. Interesting. It cuts the Osborne district in 2 pieces. 3. So what we're going forward with a workshop on a Saturday. I can give you a date. It's in my calendar. I don't know what date it is ever. So for some reason it was suggested that we choose between option 3 and option 5. Now I have really personally, and no other commissioners are here, so I can talk. Option 3 does 2 things. It cuts the Osborne community apart and eliminates Sarah Malaga from being commissioner.
Period.
Well, we have yet to cross that bridge if that happens. It's a couple blocks over, so I was a little gobsmacked when they did that the other day because one thing we absolutely said don't do was to cut up the Osborne community. So we're going to have a workshop. I am praying that my commissioners will see my way, which is, of course, the right way, right? Hey, I'm the mayor, I can say that. And go with 5, which, if you look at it, makes the most sense. It's almost rectangular. And, people don't like change, and some of the neighborhood associations will be cut up, but that doesn't matter. It's only for voting. So the neighborhood associations can keep your boundaries. This doesn't really affect them. And on some level now, those neighborhood associations will have 2 commissioners to talk to. But so that's the story behind that. Whoever asked. Any other questions while I'm here before I go home and cry?
Sarah's, because she was in district, she's district 1.
She's in District 1, but if you look at number 3, it moves the boundary east and puts her, or west, I forget, and puts her in District 4. Yeah.
I actually have a question of Sylvia. Oh, there you are.
Yep.
What are the boundaries of your neighborhood association? I'm not really sure, to be honest with you.
So we basically run
Oh.
from 10th Avenue south to Lucerne,
Okay.
and then from 10th Avenue south to Lucerne, and then from I-95 east to Dixie.
So you would, under this, you would cross to,
There's no ideal split up on these for Tropical Ridge,
okay.
but
Well,
as the
that's what
mayor said,
yeah,
you
it
know,
doesn't
we
matter.
still remain
Okay.
a neighborhood. So
Okay. All right. Well, that's helpful.
yeah,
I
every
know-
option in some way divides Tropical Ridge. But
Okay. There are a lot of them.
There's 4 or 5 of them. On the 17th, I'm sorry, on the, and I'm just too busy. On the 17th, I have added a presentation, Ted Bronstein and Steve Lockwood. Steve Lockwood is the head of the Lakewood Historical Society. I've asked them, they just recently finished a little book about the Osborne School building, which is very interesting history. So just to emphasize the importance of that district, I've asked them to do a presentation on the 17th about the Osborne community, the history of the Osborne community. If you don't know, it's very sad, and but it's part of our history. So on the 17th, that's going to be one of the presentations, and that's just before the meeting on that next Saturday or 2 Saturdays later. The meeting, it's going to be a special meeting at the commission chambers because we're going to vote. So there will be public comment.
So you're gonna vote on this?
Or
Or you just?
Yeah. And the special meeting. This is Saturday, I think. Yeah, it's Saturday.
16th, 17th is Tuesday.
No, 17th of January is when I'm having the Osborne Community presentation.
Okay.
The special meeting on a Saturday is when we're actually going to vote between 3 and 5.
So 14th,
Is it? I don't know.
that's a Saturday.
No. February.
Okay, February. And will there be public input?
It's a special meeting on the 4th. I believe it's at 1 o'clock at Commission Chambers. We are going to vote, so there will be public input. And I welcome public input. Listen to me and hear me now. I am welcoming public input on this one because I cannot imagine why on earth anybody would vote to split that road, to split that community.
So we need a lot of that.
Yeah. It even gets, one of the things is the historical Osborne School, which was the black kids' school at first, and is now used by for the children. It would eliminate that out of the Osborne district.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry, then what's the special meeting? Is it?
I think it's at 1 o'clock. It will be on the agenda, but it'll be on the website. But I think it's 1 o'clock. Any other questions while you've got me? Just offhand.
Some of these kids are younger, so they might not know about the Lake Forest Osborne Black community. Why is it so important to keep them together?
So you kids are from where? Turn around and let me see you.
Lakewood High.
Lakewood High School? Okay, great. I love Lakewood High School. We love Lakewood High School. We're big supporters of the sports and the band there. The southwest corner of the city, real brief history. In the early part of the 19th century, black people were not allowed to live in Lakewood. So they did what's called an addition to the map and added an area where black people were allowed to live. Thank you very much. It was called the Osborne Colored Edition.
Look at option 5.
Yeah, well, thank you.
It's right where the railroad tracks here on the bottom. This was a historically
That
black.
whole area. Thank you, Sylvia. And the people that live there now are descendants of the people that, moved in there. There was actually a wall built that goes down Wingfield Street, and it literally is a cinder block wall put up so that black people wouldn't tramp into the yards of the white people next door. You couldn't go to the same school. It was segregation. It was horrible. So the wall is now beautifully painted a couple times. It's the Unity Wall now, and the Osborne edition. It's not called the Osborne Colored Edition anymore. When I was city attorney, I couldn't stand that. I thought it was horrible, but that was still that. So I worked with the county and got permission from the commission, and it's now the Osborne Edition, formerly known as the Osborne Fund, which is buried in deeds, but I think it makes a subtle difference in the world. So now things are different, but a lot of the people that live there are descendants of the people that moved there in the 20s and 30s. I went to a meeting about painting the wall, and it was like the ladies were talking, well, my grandmother owned the laundromat, and the other said, well, my father was across the street in the grocery store. These are people that have a history, and it's important to preserve that.
Just to add to a little bit of what Lee was saying too, I graduated in '64 from Lakewood High School. But sometime now in the early '60s, must have been '62, '63.
She went to Lakewood High School.
The school in the area that he's talking about, there was one big classroom building. It was from kindergarten. I don't think there was a kindergarten, first through 8th graders. That was all grades together in the school in the area she's talking about in one big room. Kids couldn't go to Barton, they couldn't go to North Grade, they couldn't go to South Grade, they couldn't go to Highland. The middle school was Carver Middle School in Delray Beach. They couldn't go to Lakewood Junior High School. Lakewood High wasn't integrated until '64, I think, '63, '64. So for high school, I think they had to go to Riviera Beach High. So a great deal, they were bused, yeah. They weren't allowed to go to Lakewood High. So it is very, very important that we keep that community's history and keep them together.
Thank you for explanation. Mayor Betty Rush and Janet. You guys have any questions? We are done for the night. Don't forget, we have some pollinator garden seed mix, so please take one as you're leaving. It's right here on this table. If you didn't sign in, if you could just please sign in. And it's on this table as well. Everyone have a good night, and I signed everybody's community service hours. So we will have February 11th and the 25th, we will have a gardening event. So where you get to dig your fingers in the dirt and not just have to listen to a lecture. So, but the lecture is good just for background information. So you're more familiar with plants and trees and fertilizer and water and stuff. So, if you guys have any questions? No? You guys can go whenever you want to. And I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Alright guys, also say thank you to Sylvia and Carolyn for putting this meeting together. They do a lot for Tropical Ridge. Alright guys, have a good night.
Thank you.